Hey everyone, welcome to the Inventory Source podcast. Today we have PJ Stafford from UNFI, specifically the e-commerce division on a screen. PJ, how are you today, man?
Good, Travis. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. You guys have been a partner of ours for a really long time, and like I was just saying, I'm excited to have you guys on the podcast. I think you have a lot of cool things to share, and looking forward to it. Um, really for those that might not know anything about UNFI or on a screen, it'd be great just get kicked off with a little bit of background on you guys and your company.
UNFI, United Natural Foods, is a public company. It's about $10 billion in revenue. It's the largest organic natural distributor in the country. I'm the VP of e-commerce, and as part of our e-commerce services for retailers, both online and brick and mortar retailers, we offer drop shipping service to sort of give them an endless aisle, extended aisle assortment to sell beyond what they can fit in their own warehouse, if they even have a warehouse.
Sure. Yeah, and you guys, speaking of warehouses, you guys have been growing like crazy, right? I mean, how many warehouses you at right
We've
now?
got 30 warehouses in the U.S., but we've right now we've e-commerce enabled five of them. When you and I started working together 5, 6 years ago, we started with one, and now we can by
Right.
east, west, central to get closer to the customers, less lower shipping costs, less transit time, less damage in transit, and a bigger assortment.
Sure. Now, you say e-commerce enabled. I mean, like it's definitely not a flip of a switch, right? I mean, it's kind of a process to be ready to ship out, kind of in that one off, two off manner, right? I mean, what does that process look like to quote unquote e-commerce enable a
Yeah,
warehouse?
these large grocery warehouses, they're set up for shipping cases on a pallet to a truck to a store. They're not set up for picking in each and wrapping it in bubble wrap and putting it in a box and running it through a UPS thing, with conveyors and all that kind of stuff. So when we e-commerce enable a warehouse, it's sort of a big deal because we've got to set up a whole separate area to be able to do each picks, to do the type of repackaging. And even if we're shipping a case, you got a case of glass, you got to ship it in a special way. It's not just putting the case of glass on a pallet and putting it on a truck. It's protecting it against the ravages of UPS.
Right. Right. Yeah. I bet that whole process of e-commerce enabling warehouses. I would imagine, and I'd be curious on your feedback because I know you've been in the space for a while. I would think that's probably a trend for a lot of these large warehouses, as drop ship and direct to consumer is becoming more of a demand. Do you have a sense of that? If that's happening outside your guys' industry or just throughout your industry, is that a pretty common thing or a trend that we think we're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, the trend, definitely seeing is large supermarkets. Remember, we're in the food space, so the supermarkets
Mhm.
have been focusing on click and collect, like local, where people order and the store picks it and has it ready for pickup, or local
Mhm.
delivery. But the supermarkets are now moving big into drop ship. They want to have 100,000, 200, 300,000 items, so that consumers are buying from them rather than going, say, to Amazon for brands. So we are
Mhm.
starting to see more and more demand for drop shipping from sort of traditional retailers, and it's difficult for them to make the changes in their warehouse needed for drop shipping. It's such
Right.
significant space and technology and stuff that we're seeing a lot of growth in what they call 3PLs, third party logistic firms, that are companies that sort of act as warehouses. You ship your stuff to the warehouse and they break the case and ship eaches to consumers. But we're also seeing the growth in what we're doing. Our service has been growing significantly as people like the idea of having access to tens of thousands of items, particularly perishable things with short shelf life, 2, 3 months. They don't
Right.
want to inventory it and have it go bad.
Right. Right. So a supermarket, obviously, like you alluded to, there's the pickup from directly from the supermarket, right? Like the shipped is one of the companies I know is kind of popular.
Yeah.
There's a couple other ones out there where they'll pick it up, but just more so now, just having their own. Publix is a big Southeast grocer here down in Florida and Georgia area. And having a website now where it might not be at one of their supermarkets, but it's at a 3PL or it's with you guys in one of your e-commerce enabled warehouses. That's kind of the trend, right? Because like you said, they need to have that extended aisle to compete with Amazon. Otherwise, they'll just go to Amazon,
Yeah,
right?
we call Amazon's called the basket bandit. Amazon sort of takes the profitable long tail items out of the supermarket's shopping basket as consumers want certain things, and they're trying to figure out how to compete. I'm seeing supermarkets are starting to create marketplaces.
Hmm.
Marketplaces. I don't want to mention their names because they may not have gone public with it, but I know of two very large ones that are launching shortly, where they're basically creating like Amazon marketplace type things and getting drop shippers to participate so that they can offer hundreds of thousands or millions of items to their customers.
Hmm. Right. So the UNFI, or specifically the honest green model, I should say, uh, it's purchasing, right? You guys aren't acting as just a warehouse or a 3PL for any of these supermarkets. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're more or less purchasing the brands that you know that these supermarkets are wanting to buy, and you're buying wholesale, like the hot brands and the brands that your customers are asking for you to drop ship. Is that a fair
Right. I
assessment
mean,
of your guys'
Unilever's a
model?
distributor, so we buy from the manufacturers. We tend to be the largest customer of many of these
Hmm.
brands. We have over 9,000 brands, um,
Right.
particularly in the health and wellness, these niche areas. We tend to be the largest buyer of this products, and then we sell to retailers. We don't sell to consumers. We sell to retailers like Whole Foods. We sell to online sites like CBS.com that we drop ship for, or we sell them pallets as well to the warehouse. So drop shipping is just e-commerce is only about 3% of UNFI's business. It's $10 billion in sales. It takes a lot to move the needle, but it's a growing part.
Sure. Now, when it comes to that model and identifying the brands that I would especially in the perishable items world, I would think that be able to merchandise. Well, I guess not really merchandise from a retail perspective, but at least pick the right brands that make sense that you guys are going to be able to sell through on. Do you have any insight into that process? I don't know how much you might dabble in that or not, but like, how do you determine the demand of the brands that you guys want to purchase and store in your warehouse?
Yeah, I mean the process by which a niche brand gets onboarded into distribution. Normally, there has to be some retail demand for the product, so we have to know that we're going to move. I'm making up this number, 10 cases a week from that warehouse, or else we're not going to activate that item in a warehouse. It's got to move. The thing we have to sell is the space in the warehouse. That's our product. So we only take on stuff that we know is going to move. And then the e-commerce retailers, whether they're dropship retailers or they're e-commerce retailers that have a warehouse, they pull from that same inventory, the same inventory that Whole Foods and local independent natural retailers are pulling from. Our e-commerce customers are pulling from that same inventory, and we monitor trends very closely. Things that there's hot trends, there's cold trends, so we discontinue items. We add hundreds of items a month as well.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if the assortment or the selection of products that you guys have, or maybe it's fulfillment or the warehousing. How do you guys kind of? I know you're large. You're a very large distributor, but how do you sit when it comes to your competitors, and how do you compete with them when a retailer might be looking to work with you versus one of your competitors? What's kind of that advantage that you guys might
Yeah, I
have?
mean, I think someone who's a dropship online seller, whether they have their own warehouse or whether they're dropship only, they generally want to work. I think they want to work with fewer, larger dropship suppliers, and a lot of it has to do with
Hmm.
shipping economics. You really don't want to buy one item from UNFI, one item from this other company, one item from this other, and pay three shipping charges to fulfill an order to a consumer. Generally speaking, you're better off, if someone like natural organic products like us, they might be buying three or four different items, which helps with the $6 or $7 UPS SurePost shipping charge. So fewer better. You want to make sure they're reliable. I've in prior lives before UNFI, I've worked with drop shippers that just suddenly go out of business. They're not. It's a low margin, thin margin business, and if you're not well capitalized, you can sort of disappear one day, and then if your whole website's based on that, your whole business goes away with your dropship supplier. So there's some logic to working with larger, well capitalized businesses that are going to be there for the long term.
For sure. Yeah, and that's good. I'm glad you brought that up for those that might be listening to this that are new to drop shipping or just considering getting into it. I mean, that is one of the big things that a lot of people realize quickly. If you get an order, you want to send it to one location with, ideally in one box from one distributor because otherwise the economics just kind of break down if you start involving split shipping in a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're selling. Shampoo and stuff, it's tough. If it's like $100, $50 item, that's fine. You can have a second dropship supplier because it's a
Sure.
$50 item, it'll work. But when you're talking about these kind of, center store or grocery store, uh, you really want as many of them to come from one box as possible. Was one of the things I like about Inventory Source. I mean, we have hundreds of mutual customers, and you have, the service. I know you've got this new geo-locating service where it can route the orders
Mhm.
based on where the ship to address is and closest to the warehouse that works for us. And that's really valuable to online sellers, to be able to
For sure.
automatically route it to our California warehouse because the consumer's in California, or if we're out of stock in California, to ship it from Wisconsin, but don't ship it from New York, ship it closer.
Right.
So I think that's an important
Yeah.
feature.
No, for sure. And, like you mentioned, thin margin, ideally high volume kind of industry that you're in when you're drop shipping. Those little things count. That's definitely why. And I think you were kind of one of the ones that pushed on us to get that built out. And it was a great idea, and I know our customers love it. Where they're saving on shipping, they're building their business, and it kind of works out for everyone.
Hey,
So,
Travis, can we
you,
touch on IS Direct? Because I think it's a really interesting
yeah,
service you guys have. Um,
yeah,
for
sure.
those don't know what IS Direct is, well, here I am explaining your service. But
No,
you basically, if you're an online seller, rather than go to like 10 different dropship suppliers and sign their contract and pay their setup fees and spend months like getting set up, IS Direct, Inventory Source Direct, already has those relationships with, you know, some of the best dropship suppliers like UNFI. And so you can like immediately be selling, and then so our customer is Inventory Source. It's not you as an individual thing, but you get, you're not paying $500 setup fees. You're not, there's a lot of advantages to sort of the IS Direct model, particularly for small, mid-sized drop shippers.
yeah, I appreciate the plug there, and but I think it's like you said, valuable for a lot of people to know because really we saw a need when we launched IS Direct to really make it easy for people to just get started, get ramped up, not have to go through the paperwork, the approval process, all that kind of stuff. And then at least to get started and start testing the market. That's the great thing about the internet and e-commerce nowadays. You can really you can throw up a store really quick, try out an idea, a good college effort at a niche and see if you can make some money. And if you can't, then you can move on to another niche or whatever it might be. But if you do, you can always evolve on from IS Direct and maybe reach out and go work with Honest Green directly. Eventually, once you've kind of got some sales volume and look to, try to increase margins there, maybe even start purchasing wholesale, right, on items that that you can push through testing through dropship, which I think is a
Yeah.
huge thing that gets overlooked in dropship is the testing out of whether it's a niche in a store, an approach, and a marketing tactic, but specifically items, right? Can I push this brand? Oh, this brand is selling off the proverbial shelf very quickly. I can buy that wholesale from UNFI and make some more margin
Yeah.
there. So, um,
That the wholesale, that's a great analogy because when if we're selling we're selling somebody a pallet of something because they know they can move it at Amazon or their own site, whatever. They obviously get lower pricing from us, and we have items that are on sale 30, 40, 50%, at any given month. But if you buy a pallet of it and you buy it at 40% off, you've got that low price for 2 or 3, 4 months. When you're drop shipping, you only have the deal for the month, that it's in place. So
mhm.
as a way to test out new categories. Yeah, I think I'm really pleased with your offering. It's gotten us access to some, people, and they can get up and running and selling in a few days, right? I mean, for us, it could take, 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes to, get set up with us. And so there's some real advantages. So it's something worth take a
For sure.
look at IS Direct.
Awesome. Well, yeah, this has been great, PJ. I do want to kind of close this with I'd love to know what you guys are looking at on a screen over there for the next year, 2 years. What's on the roadmap? What can we expect from you guys? What are you guys focused on? Love to get a kind of peek into the future over there.
Yeah, for us, we have we're expanding into conventional grocery from not just organic and natural. The deal hasn't closed, so I can't really. There's not a lot to talk about. It's been announced. We're a public company, so if you search UNFI, you'll see information on it. But that's going to give us, if the deal closes, will give us a significant number of new, 100,000 new SKUs that we'll be able to sell. We won't be able to drop ship them all on day one, but eventually more of those warehouses will be e-commerce enabled. So you'll have not just, the ability to sell everything in a Whole Foods, but everything at a conventional supermarket as well, which I think would be really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Well, cool. Well, looking forward to learning more about that. And thanks again for making the podcast. Anyone that's listening, you'll be able to find this on our YouTube channel. If you just search Inventory Source, it'll also be at inventorysource.com on our blog, and you can find the podcast there.